Welcome to the Missions Podcast, the show that explores your hard questions on missions, theology, and practice to help goers think and thinkers go. I'm Alex Kochman, Director of Communications and Media with ABWE, again, live from the Radius International Missions Conference with Scott Dunford here and Brad Buser, who, what is your official title with Radius? Are you on the board? Founder. Co-founder of Radius International. Father of the President of Radius
Father
International.
Father of the President, yeah. Working for the President.
OG Radius Inspire.
Radius hasn't been around that long, so there's really no
Patriarch of Radius International, good stuff.
Go.
And we're just joshing around a little bit about some of the good times and fellowship that we've had since we've been here. So how's this conference been for you so far, Brad?
It's been super encouraging. We had a ceremony last night, just an alumni gathering, and 10 years worth of graduates, and we can't believe it. Yeah, there have been 300 graduates, and the majority are overseas now in hard places, learning languages. We're so incredibly proud of them, and a little bit of our heart goes out with every one of them. We live vicariously through them now.
Praise God.
Yeah, it's a thrilling time. Yeah. That's so what Brooks has done, taken it to the next level. No one could have foreseen it.
Can you give us a 2-minute summary reminder of how you cut your teeth in missions and your background prior to you guys starting Radius and everything that you're doing now here in the States, for those listeners that might not have heard our previous discussions with you?
Yeah, I had a youth pastor that I cannot describe him, but he was not our friend, he was not our buddy. He just taught us God's word, and he pretty much put us in a hammerlock and threw us to the mat. And you either tapped out and said, I'll do it, or else you're not a man, you're not a follower of Christ, you're not obedient. And those just weren't options. And my dad was 45 years in the U.S. Navy, so you serve your country, you serve your highest power. When I became a Christian, 3 months after that, I took an application for career missionary service, and 23 years old, my wife, she was 22, I was 23, we took off for Papua New Guinea with a one-way ticket for 5 years. It was a different world back then, really, truly.
So I've known you, or at least of you, a long time, because I pastored in an area where your father-in-law pastored. And here I am, a young pastor. I was 24 years old, really had no business in ministry. And here's this veteran, senior,
pastor, that's great,
mission-loving pastor who is now retired, who just loved his kids and grandkids. And you were the kid and son-in-law, and of course, Brooks is the grandson. I heard all about you guys, even though I'd never met you. And one of the things that I never forget about Bob, one, he was a lover of missions. To the detriment of the church sometimes. He loved missions. And he gave generously to missions and prayed for missionaries, and he taught me a lot about prayer. But one of the things that he said that has stuck with me for years now, this is 20 years ago he said this to me, was he's getting older, he's retired in ministry, but still serving the Lord. And he said, Scott, as I study the Bible, I see the Bible's full of old men that walk away from the Lord. He talked about the kings, like the end of their life. I'm feeling emotional because he's with the Lord now, but he said, and I don't want to go out like that. I want to be faithful to the end. I want to keep faithful to Jesus. One thing I've heard over and over and over consistently from you in your teaching is a call to endurance in Christian ministry. That ministry is not going to be easy. We've got to endure. Where does that passion for people to endure in ministry come from? Why is that such an important thing, especially in this day and age, for us to think about endurance and finishing well?
Probably a lot of things. One of them being dear friends, good missionaries, that with another 2 years, their church could have been in a spot to leave them. And they paid such a high price. They endured so much suffering and so much separation with their kids. Just 2 more years, buddy, that church will be ready to leave, and they didn't, okay? And not want to see that replicated. And of course, I'm mostly focused on the missions world and the necessity of finishing well there. When Beth and I came back for our last term on the field, we saw that maybe in 4 years this thing could be wrapped up. And what we did was we went around to other guys that were in our vicinity. Guys, look at our church, look at our work, look at the translation. You tell us when we're done. I don't want to make that decision on my own, because I know I wanted to get out of the jungle. I wanted to get back with my kids. And those guys really helped us make that decision, so that in making that decision, leaving the right way, and it's like you're free. God can use you in the next scene of life. And we've just seen too many missionaries not implement that. The secret motivations that are in there, it's hard, and it just gets harder too. Yeah, that's a big part of why we talk to our guys here. Man, finish well, guys.
Yeah.
God has a lot more for you to do than just that one language group. Best man in my wedding, he's nearly done with his second translation in a second tribal situation. So I'm surrounded by guys, that have held the bar up there real high for me.
One of the things that I've also heard from you has been, on that day, you're before the Lord, you want to be able to say, here's the Iteti people. For Brooks, similar, here's the MBMB people, right here, giving back to Christ, his reward. What do you do to keep that in front of you? Because that's such a uncommon way of thinking. People don't think that way. We're not eternally minded at all. And to even hear those comments, I think for so many people that just sounds so theoretical and so far off and so remote, and to have such perspective to not only say, I'm going to go and do this thing, but actually I'm viewing this so long term that I'm thinking about when my task as a missionary here is done and turned over multiple generations of believers in a context, I want to be able to take that people group, not that it's yours, but take that people group and show that to the Lord and say, see, Lord, where does that thinking come from?
Well, I mean, purely on its own, it can be kind of a selfish way of looking at things. Look what I did, and man, I'd never want to term it in that way.
Sure.
But it is. There's so many. I'm proud of my kids, I'm proud of my wife, what she's endured. My grandkids now, to see where they're at, man, what God has done through Radius. But I think that church, because the church is the apple of his eye, it's his bride, and this is just one part of his bride, the Iteti people that are still worshiping the Lord out there in the middle of the jungle. And man, anybody who knows my life inside out knows I haven't done it well. It's just. We talk a lot to the Radius students about, guys, you're going to blow it in ministry. Man, the Lord's restitution of Peter, that's going to be part of your story too. Get up again, keep going. And so I hope that our guys are ready to fall, not planning on it, but ready to get up again.
Can I jump in on that with a follow-up? When you're talking to some of those students and you're having that kind of a Peter conversation with them, right? And the words that Jesus shares to Peter, that was all, his story had its ups and downs, and the Lord restored him. What do you see? Have you had conversations with Radius students where you're seeing something in their lives where it's like they're going to go through something, they're not going to endure, or maybe they'll endure for a while and fall away, or maybe they'll fall away but come back? What are the things that you notice even at that early stage that maybe give you concern? Things that a young person might want to evaluate their own lives and say, like, do I have what it takes to endure?
Well, you know that all the students are divided into community groups. And as a community group leader, not initially, but probably after a month, I'm asking them, what do you know about yourself that your concern is going to take you off the field? Before I have to get to know you and start digging. Because everybody has flaws. Everybody has chinks, okay? We don't have any Apostle Pauls coming to us or Virgin Marys coming to us. These are all people that are prone to falling down. And that is part of our job. After we get to know them, we can be more insightful with that, and work with them. And we don't produce Apostle Pauls or Virgin Marys, but to take them further in those things, at least where they're self-aware. And I'd say as Radius has gone on and its existence now being 10 years, there were things that we regret as community group leaders in the first few years that we saw, but we didn't step into it forcefully enough. Okay, and so I think now, because we've seen the pain of people that if they just would have gotten hold of this area, good people, sharp people, man, best of motivations, we didn't step forcefully into it enough. And so, I would love to leave every one of my community.
And you guys are pretty straight shooters.
Oh yeah.
So that's saying something.
Yeah. Well, we're a lot more straight shooters now than we were 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I want to have everybody in my community group as a lifelong friend, but I'll jeopardize that, for the sake of being honest with them, so they know this is my tendency. That's part of our job. We have to do that well. So.
I hear you talking about leaving maybe because things are hard, or because there's a character flaw or a sin issue that takes you off the field. So many times, life in ministry, it's not that cut and dry. You're in the middle of ministry. Mm-hmm. You think that you're making a clear-minded decision, and then a few years later you look back and go, I don't know, I was really tired when I made that decision, or I didn't really process how much pain we were in, or maybe I overthought my need in the next situation. So sometimes you're in a ministry situation, there's an opportunity, you think, God needs me to do this, and so I'm walking away with noble intentions. When you're walking with someone in a ministry situation, there's not a sin issue, and they're thinking about transitioning to another thing, what are the kind of questions you would ask them to say, are you sure that you're not leaving too soon? Because there's been times I look back and go like, I wish I had someone going like, what about that?
One of the biggest temptations in that venue that you're talking about, that arena, is when a missionary's been on the field, like we were on the field for 12 years, 13, 14, 15 years, man, the church is booming, translation's going well, we're getting all kinds of invitations. Come up to Numenoid, be a consultant for this, be a consultant for this, be a field leader, be an orientation officer.
Yeah.
The temptation is, man, serve the bigger cause, okay?
Yeah.
And you can be here with your kids. And the organization makes it so easy for you to opt out. And so while the students are down that radius, we'll read Adoniram's Judson's very clear words about the biggest temptation you'll face is when you just get tired of the day-to-day labor in a hard situation and you're providing a good out.
Yeah, grass looks greener.
Yeah, and it is, in the sense of be with your kids, high elevation. So we talked to the students about that in the first few weeks. You know, this is one of the biggest temptations. You guys that are successful, but don't finish well, this will be a big part of it, okay? And philosophically, we have never taken somebody in training and turned them into already a staff member. They come in, they empty out. They come in, they empty out. But 2 years ago, we offered 2 people because we were really hurting for staff. Would you guys join us in staff? I said, no way. You're doing exactly what you told us the agencies would do. No way. We're heading out there. So it came back to bite us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good job training.
Yeah.
Oh, my word. So I can see in some settings, maybe in a somewhat enclosed tribal setting, like there's a task that you'll know when your task is done. Mm-hmm. But imagine you're working with the Uyghur people, 12 million people, you know, and their diaspora. And there are ministries that are important that it's a little harder to know when your job's done. What are the kind of questions you would teach a student to analyze and say, is the job done or is just your part of the job done?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have 3 metrics in place that we encourage our students to really bite down hard when they're making a big decision. And there's not that many of them, but the big ones, never make it when you're discouraged. Never make it on your own. Get the counsel of people in your area, not your home church. That can be part of it, but not people that they're dependent on what you feed them.
Right.
Of course,
Bless you.
But people that love the Lord more than they love you, okay? And then don't make it quick. Yeah, and if you implement those 3 components, you're probably going to be in a pretty safe place to make that decision.
When I transitioned out of my last ministry into my current ministry, Acts 20 was also really helpful for me in that area. Just hearing Paul say, I didn't cease night and day, preaching the full counsel of God's word to you, in homes and this place and that. And he warns them that wolves are coming, but his conscience was clean too. So maybe a 4th thing would be your conscience. You might not be able to track numerically, like did you plant X number of churches, did you see X number of converts, those sorts of things, but is your conscience clean?
Yeah.
What have you done to maintain for you a clean conscience in that area in your ministry? What made you feel as though, okay, these people are well enough without me almost?
Yeah, again, in looking back, I'm really glad, and somebody had put that in my head too, and I'd seen people leave precipitously, too soon. And so when we came back in 75, we gathered some guys. They came in, looked at Teddy, and they came in and checked on us, pretty consistently. And they validated, if you keep going at that pace, the Lord gives you good health, you can get the translation done. So that was our primary metric, is to see the church strong and established and see the translation done. And that happened in 1999. And by that time there, our organization was asking us, would you come back and be a recruiter? Okay, well, not until, and again, come back now, I'd love to, but I got to get this thing done so I can go on with that clear conscience. Yeah. So that's a great component that you're putting in there.
If I can just be so bold to add a couple things that I've learned, kind of the hard way, I feel like, is...
You were getting a little autobiographical earlier, I think, right?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
It's okay.
I always learn the hard way.
This is our podcast. You can be real.
That's right.
Ask a lot of people for advice, but ask someone who will tell you the opposite of what you kind of want to hear.
Absolutely.
I noticed that. I would ask a wide range of people, but as I started looking at who I'd asked in retrospect, I'm like, I asked people that had a vested interest in me doing this thing, and didn't ask people who I felt like would probably shoot down my good idea. And I really liked what you said about taking time. Because some people are slow. I would say, like, between you and I make this. We walked in, we looked at a mattress, we bought it within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Other people were there for hours, and the guy looked at me, and said, "How did you guys buy a mattress that fast?" Like, my wife and I make fast decisions.
I take a while. Only last week did I decide that I really want to do this podcast with you.
That's great. but there's different kinds of people that process fast and slow. Well, if you process fast, sometimes slow feels like, if I'm spending a month, it feels slow. But that isn't, I don't think, what you're talking about, especially with major ministry decisions.
Those things that are going to haunt you later on, man. I think I hit the eject button a little bit too early. Yeah, you really want to be sure you're going slow. And another thing, the scripture says, in the multitude of counselors there lacketh not wisdom. That whole concept represented in that verse isn't like one guy in Nebraska, one guy in Texas, one guy in Guatemala. Get those guys together.
Oh yeah, multitude. Right, a multitude would
let them talk without you
like
in the
a crowd.
Because it's a lot harder for one-on-one for you to shoot down what you sense I want to do. Yeah. But if you come in there with 3 guys, bro, this is what we think.
Can I just ask you just a personal question? I guess it's all personal.
What's the worst sin you've ever committed?
So one secret you've never told anyone. No. Well, I've seen someone do that before. About what age did you feel like you really started to understand yourself, your wife well, and how you processed and made decisions? Was there an age where you're like, around this time?
50.
Because you're older than us a little bit.
Yeah.
So at what age do you feel like I started to really get a better sense of who I was and how I made decisions, and the kind of habitual mistakes I was making?
Well, habitual mistakes were my mouth. I mean, that's from time immemorial. That's my besetting sin.
Well, don't worry, this isn't live.
Yeah, okay. But, we were hitting the ground hard so fast. We barely knew each other when we got married. We went, 3.5 weeks after marriage, we went right into missionary training. We just blasted through that. We blasted into having kids. 3 weeks after we were married, we have Brooks comes, she got pregnant for Brooks. Every time I looked at my wife, she got pregnant, And we go to the field, we got 2 kids. We're just charging. And one of the things, and I don't recommend that necessarily, but one of the things I think that is a concern, and we talk to radio students about overthinking everything. Man, really getting inside their own head, looking for perfection of team, of situation. And guys, it's a big world out there.
Yeah.
Walk in the light that you have. Don't be stupid. Get counsel, but get going here.
So your answer to that question is, don't overthink it, Dunford. Just start following Jesus.
Yeah, I know that's really simple. And come on, there's times to sit down and really ponder where you're at. And if I've really hurt my wife, of course I got to put some thought into that. But she's pretty rugged, And again, I had no idea who I was marrying. I married way over my head.
Yeah, say what you said before we started recording about the way that your wife was raised to think of herself as. What word did you, disposable?
Expendable.
So unpack that briefly, just because I think that's just an inspiration to anyone who's either looking to marry or raising children.
Yeah, not being fragile. I mean, some of the things that
Expendable for Christ.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But she had to put up with a lot. Pastor Bob was a full-on pastor, and things that other situations.
Her father.
Yeah, my father-in-law, her dad. Man, he was full-on into the ministry. He loved that community so well. And sometimes she took it in the neck, and instead of giving her, oh, son, I apologize. There was that. There was love, but honey, we're in the ministry. This is our family. This is what we do. We expend ourselves, okay? And and what we tell students down there at Radius is, you have to win your wife and your kids to this task. Don't assume on it. And he did that on a regular basis. He won her to, man, we have a privilege of being expendable for this community. So that really took root in her head, and so. I didn't know that. I just she was gorgeous, and I found out she's like super spiritually mature too.
She's got that weird thing though, where you look at her and she gets pregnant. That's
I know.
A medical
it is
condition.
Well, after 24 kids, we did something. I'm kidding.
That's why you wear glasses.
I poked out my eyes.
Thank you
the
so
glasses
much.
do something. That's good. Yeah. We're so glad to have you. We're grateful for the legacy that you're leaving, and through Radius, and how your wisdom's been a blessing to mobilize and encourage a lot of other people. So thanks, Brad. We appreciate you. And we appreciate all of you who've been watching and listening to us as we are bringing you content that we got here at the Radius International Missions Missiology Conference. and we are coming to you from North Carolina here. So we're glad that you tuned in. And to learn more about Missions Podcast, go to missionspodcast.com. Leave us a 5-star review while you're there. That helps get this content in front of other people. And until next time, thank you for watching and listening.